All right, good afternoon, Commissioners. We'll call the Public Services Committee to order. First item is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Need a motion to adopt the agenda.
Romano adopts the agenda.
I'll second.
Please vote.
Motion passes 8-0.
Thank you. Next item is public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard on any item on the agenda? Please speak. You have 3 minutes. State your name for the record. And
My name is Michael Scoopin. I live at 35032 Hidden Cove Court in Hidden Cove Condominiums, Harrison Township, Michigan. We're very frustrated. We have a condition in the bay in front of our condos with lingbaya and muck. We do not own the bay. The bay, as far as I can find, was there back to 1930. We have boat wells. I have been in contact with all forms of government. I started with Steve Marino, Pete Lucido, Scott Ray, Mary Kay Soggy, Michael Popa from TNT Marine Salvage, Dwayne, the crew leader over at the DNR. The DNR has had to clean out their launch area for the last 20 years with this lingbaya and muck. And last year they had to clean it out twice. Now they're rebuilding that whole area to hope to prevent it. I've talked to the Macomb County Health, Andrew Cox. I've been in touch with EGLE, Andy Hartz. I mean, we have gone through Oakland County University to see if they can give us some help with the study on lingbaya to what is it, how is it forming, what nutrient is in the water that's causing it. It's on the whole shoreline of Lake St. Clair in Harrison Township. It's not only our bay. If you go south by the spillway, or north of us by the spillway, on the south side you have a marina and then property. There's 2 football fields of lingbaya growing that's probably 500, 600 feet out into the bay. I've been in touch with Lisa McLean, Debbie Stabenow. I've been in touch with Kevin Goodwin out of the state of Michigan. He's a aquatic biology specialist, Michigan Department of Environmental. We're at our wits' end. We don't know what to do. We don't own the water. We need help. This lingbaya is anywhere from a foot to 2 feet thick, and then there's 5 to 7 feet or more of muck underneath it. We're just asking if there's any way, any government agency that can help us. Thank you.
thank you.
Hi. My name is Caroline Perrin, and I'm a resident along with Mike. I live at 35016 Hidden Cove Court. I purchased my home just over a year ago in August, and at that time it was completely different. The boat wells had water. They now don't. I'm one owner of 12 wells available in the association. The boat well was presented to me as a usable and an environmentally safe well, which my taxes certainly reflected. Just over a year later, my property value is clearly in jeopardy and has plummeted drastically inside of a frighteningly short period of time. There's an undeniably offensive odor, and my concern, I've got 2 different concerns really. It's the health and enjoyment of my property, and it's the property value. The cost is obviously way beyond our community, our Hidden Cove community. We need serious help. I'm not sure exactly when this got started, but in the time that I've been there, I have photos that I wish that I could show you. They're on my phone. There were pontoon boats in the wells in the advertisement of when I bought this, the Zillow and the real estate. At the time, and now, it appears like you can walk right on it. It is so bad, and there's such a concern, and we are, like Mike says, at our wits' end. For the time that I've known Mike, he has done extensive research and pleading for help. In our community, we speak on everybody in our community. We would greatly appreciate any assistance. And I don't know if it would be the U.S. government, FEMA, EPA, State of Michigan, Army Corps of Engineers, EGLE, Great Lakes Water Authority, of course, Macomb County, anybody and everybody. And I just want to thank you sincerely for this opportunity to speak. And I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that'd like to speak? Sir, go ahead.
Sorry I missed the beginning of your meeting, but I got caught up in all the traffic mess you got outside. A lot of you people might not know me, but Don Brown does. I was Water Quality Board Chairman for this county for 20 years until Mark Hackle abolished the committee you people put together. You have no Water Quality Board, you have no Health Department investigators, you got rid of the environmental prosecutor. How are you going to fix anything? When I took over in 1997, every drain, every ditch, everything in this county had sewage running into it. Nobody enforced anything. We worked 14 years, enforced Clinton Township, Mount Clemens, everybody to separate and fix their sewer systems. When Mark Hackle took office, I was going to go talk to him and say, Mark, we've got all the drains fixed. Candace, we got all the drains fixed. I had to go drain by drain for 14 years and take sewage out of every drain, every ditch in this county. Nobody enforced anything. What we had left and what we have left right now is combined sewer overflows. That if Oakland County dumps 1 billion gallons of sewage down the Clinton River, and they do it every year, and some years 4 billion or 6 billion, until that stops, Lake St. Clair is going to be the open sewer it's been for the last 40 years, and so is the Clinton River. You can't fix it. Oakland County dumps its sewage down the Clinton River, down the, geez, they just got caught dumping in 2 other rivers too. The other one's an area concern that dumps go through the Ford property. I can't think of the name of it right now, but anyways.
30 seconds left, sir.
Pardon me?
30 seconds left.
Oh, well, then I'm going to be quiet. But anyways, you want to know anything about water quality, I know more about anybody in the state. We've done beach testings. We've done everything. You had a file cabinet that was full of paperwork at that health department when Mark Hackle got rid of the Water Quality Board. We had meetings every month, and we addressed pollution. Don, you know we did it. And I was so upset when he just decided he's going to get rid of it, and the Board of Commissioners didn't stand up and say we needed to save this. But it's too bad, and that's where we are now. You're not going to get any answers. There's nobody that can give you any except me. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak upon an item on today's agenda? Seeing no one else, that concludes public participation for this round. We're going to move on to department recommendations, 5A budget. This is the Planning Economic Development Grant Fund 361. I'd like to have a motion to recommend to full board.
Motion by Romano.
Motion by Romano, support Wallace. Thank you very much. Jerry?
I'm here.
Oh, I'm like, I don't say Jerry. Welcome.
Amanda Oparka, Senior Planner with Parks and Natural Resources. Jerry presented on this, I think, back in December when we applied for the grant. It is to explore some lost settlements in Lake St. Clair, in particular, the former town of Belvedere, village of Belvedere, and a former mission, St. Felicity. And we'll be partnering with the Noble Odyssey Foundation. They'll be doing all the research, underwater research. There's no excavation or anything like that. It's just exploring the potential of what was there. The hope is that after this grant, we would be able to get some sort of historical marker somewhere in Harrison Township designating these as historically significant sites. The grant is for $79,006. At the time in December, we had agreed to provide $250 of cash match for the grant. They actually came back to me a few months ago and said, we'd like to see some in-kind match for your staff time. So now we're providing $0 of cash match. Everything is in-kind from our department for administration and then the Noble Odyssey Foundation for the exploration.
Very good. Thank you, Amanda. Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Commissioner. Hi, Amanda. Just a quick question with a quick answer, hopefully. What are you looking for?
Just evidence that there was a little statue found out in Lake St. Clair where the church used to be or the mission used to be, just further proving that that exists or that there was a settlement there to then get it designated by the state as like a historical location.
Again, please appreciate what I'm asking. So you found a statue. Now you're going to get $75,000 to look for some more statues?
Look for evidence of the settlement. And then there will be a documentary film and a website dedicated to it on our county website.
Thank you. After what I just heard from these people, I think that money could be put to better use, but I'm going to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This grant is from the state specific to this project.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, please vote. Thank you, Amanda.
Thanks.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. Next item, we're going to have Brian come up, and before I say what it is, Brian, I apologize for being late due to Brian's department. It took me nearly an hour to get here today. And I almost got hit twice by random cars going through lights and stop signs. So,
Price of progress, sorry.
5B, cost share agreement, Chesterfield, North Bay Industrial Sub. I'd like to have a motion to recommend to full board. Moved by Kraft and supported by Commissioner Zinner. Thank you very much. Go ahead, Brian.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. This is a cost share agreement with Chesterfield Township. We are looking at moving forward with a local agency project, North Bay Industrial Sub, which is on the southwest quadrant of 26 and Gratiot. This is the engineering design costs that we are sharing in with Chesterfield at 60/40. It's considered a local road, so 60% to the township and 40% to the Department of Roads. So seeking approval of this cost share agreement with Chesterfield Township.
Thank you very much. Seeing no speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
This time I'd like to have a motion for 5C, D, E, and F. These are MDOT contracts, and one of them is the AECOM contract. If I can have a motion to put all four.
So moved.
Moved by Harold Hall
Support.
and supported by Van Sickle. Brian, if you can speak on them. Thank you.
Yes, as far as MDOT contract for our Traffic Operations Center fiscal year 2023, that is our annual submittal of application for CMAQ funding, congestion mitigation and air quality funding. That runs the traffic operations for our Comtech Center. So this year, the total cost is $3,665,000. That is at 80-20% split, so 80% federal funds, 20% our cost. So our cost would be $733,000. Next item would be a contract with AECOM Great Lakes, which is the contract company that we use to staff the Comtech Center and do our traffic operations activity. So that contract is in the amount of $3,265,985.33. Of that, 20% comes to the road department. It's $653,197.07. And obviously, that is a direct relationship to the MDOT contract where we get the funding through the CMAQ on the previous item. The next would be a MDOT contract. The state, MDOT, is doing a project on Gratiot M3, and it is crossing Metropolitan Parkway. In conjunction with the Clinton Township, we are participating in the enhancement or upgrade of the intersection. We are going to be placing mast arms at that intersection, which is consistent with our Metro Parkway corridor. When we do a project on our local road, which is Metro Parkway, we have placed mast arms along the intersections. So MDOT has allowed us to participate with Clinton Township in a share of that enhancement to ensure we get mast arms at the Metro and Gratiot intersection. And the last contract is MDOT contract. Shelby Township applied for TAMP grant funds through SEMCOG. TAP grant is Transportation Alternative Program. And once again, that is an 80-20 split. So the total cost of the mid-block crossings that Shelby submitted for is $331,500. The 20% share is $66,300. That is our contract with MDOT. We are the fiduciary for the townships. We administer that, but we will be submitting a cost share for the 50-50 split of that $66,300 between us and the township. So seeking approval of all those contracts.
Thank you. Oh, we don't have a speaker anymore. Seeing no speakers. Oh, you do?
I'm sorry, it didn't show up.
No, it was on and now it's off. Go ahead, Commissioner Romano.
This is an opportunity for me to formally thank Brian, so that anybody thinks that he plays favorites, please don't think it does. Took him 2 years to do my 16-mile road. Thank you, Brian. I appreciate it. I just want to formally thank you. That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you, Commissioner. Take care.
This time we have a presentation from the Great Lakes Water Authority about emergency preparedness. Brian Baker is going to come up here. If I can have a motion to receive and file.
Motion to receive and file by Romano.
Romano makes a motion. Wallace supports. Thank you very much. And Brian texted me on the way here saying he was late and he still beat me. Thanks, Brian. Welcome.
I was happy to hear that you were late as well. Made me feel much better, actually. Hi, I'm Brian Baker. I'm the Macomb County representative on the Great Lakes Water Authority, as you know. The Great Lakes Water Authority had a water main break on their 10-foot pipe up in St. Clair County. And there was a boil water advisory alert for several days, as well as a little longer for 3 northern Macomb communities. And there's also been outside irrigation restrictions in place as a result. For that incident, I know the county exec and his team, Andy McKinnon and Brandon Lewis, responded, and they were on the EOC, emergency management calls, with GLWA, and were assisting the locals in the water delivery, and we're heavily involved in that area. I think Mark even visited the break site on the second day, but we're here today because the Board of Commissioners had a couple questions on the emergency response plan and the response to this, not only this incident, but generally any incidents, how they respond with the county and the locals. I invited the new CEO of Great Lakes Water Authority to attend, and she happily accepted. Suzanne Coffey was acting CEO for about a year, and earlier this summer she was appointed the CEO. She's hit the ground running and tackled a lot of a variety of issues, and is doing a good job, and certainly reaching out to the communities as well. So I'm sure she appreciates the opportunity to get in front of you today. And with that, Suzanne Coffey.
Welcome, Suzanne.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Baker. I appreciate that. I really do appreciate the opportunity to be here not only to talk about this specific topic, but just to make a connection. It is important, I think, that Great Lakes Water Authority make connections with the elected officials in the area. I did bring a few colleagues with me in anticipation that you may have questions. The first one is Walter Davis. Mr. Davis is our Director of Emergency Preparedness. So I'm going to speak a little, and then he's going to take over and talk more about very specifically how it is that GLWA interacts with the counties, their emergency teams, and the communities. I also have with me today Randall Brown, our General Counsel, and Bill Wolfson, our Chief Administrative and Compliance Officer. Both are here in the event you have questions that they can help answer. So I'm just going to start out generally with who we are. Great Lakes Water Authority is a large water utility. We're an authority. We are a governmental agency. We are not a municipality. We were born out of the Detroit bankruptcy. We are separate and distinct in governance from Detroit. As you know, Mr. Baker indicated that he's the Macomb County representative on our 6-member board of directors. We have a representative from Wayne County as well, a representative from Oakland County, of course Macomb County. We have a representative, 2 representatives from the city of Detroit, and 1 that the governor appoints for other counties because we serve in multiple counties, not just the 3 counties. So our board of directors appointed me, as Mr. Baker had indicated. And just a little bit about our service area. We're a water utility on the drinking water side, which is this emergency that we're talking about now, but we're also a wastewater utility. We serve on the water side 3.8 million people in the state of Michigan. 113 communities receive our drinking water. So we're a large wholesale provider. We provide to the local municipality. I kind of liken us unto the interstate highways or large transmission lines. When you see the electrical transmission lines on the water side, that's where we are. On the wastewater side, we serve 2.8 million people. It's a little bit smaller district. We have on the water side 5 water treatment plants and 3 different water intakes. On the wastewater side of things, we have 1 large treatment facility, and we have 9 wet weather facilities that we operate and maintain. So I just want to give you an idea of that depth and breadth of it. I think most people know our name by now, but I don't get an opportunity to talk about who we are very often. So with that, I'm going to go over to just a high level of what happened in the emergency. I thought before we talked about how we communicate from an emergency perspective, you might be interested in hearing high-level statistics and where we are today on that emergency. It was August 13th at 4:30 in the morning. Our Systems Control Center identified that we had a water main break. So we call these mains transmission mains, as Mr. Baker had indicated. It's 10-foot diameter, our 120-inch diameter pipe. The pipe itself runs for about 26 miles. It runs from Port Huron over to Imlay City, and in Imlay City there's a branch, and it branches off from there and gets smaller. It is the largest pipe in our system. It's a high-pressure pipe. The pressure rating for that pipe is over 200 pounds per square inch, so it's a large diameter pipe under a lot of pressure, transmitting a lot of water. So that morning, as soon as the break occurred, as I said, we have many instruments in the system, pressure sensors. We could see immediately there was a loss of pressure before we had any reports. It was dark in the morning there, so we hadn't yet identified the location, but we knew what pipe it was on, and we began to identify the 23 communities that were eventually notified that we were going to issue a boil water advisory. We issued that broad water, it's about 930,000 people in those communities, so this is a very large impacted area. In the end, not all those communities had drop-in pressure that was dangerous, but the reality is, at that moment, we didn't really know how it was going to unfold. Could go very well, could have been something that was more impactful to more people. So we began to look for that break. Immediately, there was a large amount of water identified at we have a Port Huron water or Lake Huron water treatment plant. And the water from the break was only a half a mile west of that facility. And so they could see the water, chase the water back, identified the location very quickly in the middle of a farmer's field. So we shut down pumps right away, able to isolate. And on Sunday, we began to dewater that construction site. So to get down to where that pipe is, we had to get the water out of there. That's a lot of water that drained. Even though we stopped our pumping, a lot of water, still drained through that open pipe. On Monday, we were able to get into the pipe with engineers who are very skilled in this niche of looking at this type of high-pressure pipe and understanding why it failed and identifying the pipe segments that needed to be replaced. So we ordered immediately a repair kit, and it was this very large pipe is not easily available. So we were able to get a repair kit right away, shipped up from Texas. In the end, we needed more pipe, so we ordered more pipe that had to be manufactured. So we got that pipe. We've repaired the pipe. But in the meantime, we were able to restore pressure slowly to the different communities and pull that boil water advisory up and off. I'm happy to say that there aren't any communities on boil water advisory at this moment, which is good. And it's a precautionary boil water advisory that you hear. When pressures go below 20 pounds per square inch in a water pipe, there's opportunity for there to be something from the soil make its way in, right? Doesn't mean there's contamination in that water. It means there's an opportunity perhaps for it to happen. So we follow the guidelines, and our regulators at EGLE specify 20 PSI. So when we saw the opportunity for 20 PSI, be below 20 PSI for those communities, we notified. This is an abundance of caution in making sure that we're protecting public health first. So from the emergency response perspective, we stood up our Emergency Operations Center immediately, and you'll hear more from Mr. Davis about how it is that we pull that together. When we have an issue like this, we not only identify all those communities, but we begin emergency communication immediately. So that morning, we began to make phone calls to the operators. We have a big program that we call member outreach. We have about 83 meetings, 85 meetings a year. So we are in communication with these operators of these local systems on a regular basis. We've got phone lists. We know who to call. We have a web portal that for all communities, and most all our communities have meters and pressure sensors. They can see 24 hours a day the pressures that we're delivering to them and the flow rates they're delivering to them on the web. So they can also go and watch, their pressures. So identified those communities immediately, began to let them know we were going to issue a boil water advisory and work through that. The Emergency Operations Center met multiple times that first day, and then every day for a number of days, and now we're down to 3 times a week or as needed as we work through the emergency. We're presently in the stage of the repair where we have filled the pipe with water. We are chlorinating that pipe. It's a disinfection process that's required. If you had a small water main break in front of your house, it would be the same thing. They would fill that pipe with water that has chlorine in it. They would make sure that it's disinfected, and then they would flush that pipe out and begin to fill it with the regular drinking water. After that's done and it's filled with the regular drinking water, there's a couple days of sampling that has to happen to make sure there is no bacteria in that line. And so that's how generally speaking these types of things happen. That's how this particular event happened. I would say I think we've had really good communications with our member partners and close, and I attend those EOC meetings, the Emergency Operations Center meetings, and we make phone calls also to say, hey, how's it going, what's happening? So at this point, we're still in that stage. Our hope is that we're going to return that pipe to service in about a week's time. That's our goal, but we're still working toward it. We're making sure that we have that disinfection done in a way that we feel comfortable and that it certainly meets our any public health concern that we would have before we return it to service. One of the things I didn't say that I think is important to say is we were able to reroute water in our system to boost pressures as we had communities let us know, hey, we're having trouble with this pressure. The pressure that you're providing us is something that's not comfortable for us. And so at this point, what we're doing, because we're not pushing water from Port Huron West, we're pushing water up from our other 4 water treatment plants and through booster stations from the south to the north. Normally, that Lake Huron water treatment plant pushes water west and south. And so the good thing is we do have a lot of resiliency and redundancy built into the system in this network of pipes, and we were able to move that water around to be at the point we are now where we don't have boil water advisory out there. And with that, I can take questions now, or we can hear from Mr. Davis on the Emergency Operations Center piece.
Let's hear from Mr. Davis.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. As Suzanne mentioned, I'm Walter Davis. I'm the Director of Emergency Preparedness for Great Lakes Water Authority. Before I start, my background is in emergency preparedness. I retired as a State Police District Coordinator for Emergency Management. So worked with Brandon Lewis for many years. prior to him coming on board here as the emergency management coordinator. That being said, for the last 6 years, Great Lakes Water Authority has been integrating the National Incident Management System within our operations during emergencies and disasters. Because of that, we also use the Incident Command System. And if, in the event there's an emergency or disaster, we immediately have an interface between the incident commander and the Emergency Operations Center. This requires for us to, as we did during this event, make contact with the communities involved. My main responsibility is make contact with the emergency managers. We realize and understand that the incident commander has additional responsibilities that would not allow for everything to take place to bring this incident to some type of resolve. So on this event, we made contact with Brandon Lewis, I did in the morning, as well as St. Clair County and the other emergency managers involved. On a normal, if it's just one jurisdiction involved, we will send technical experts as well as myself or one of our partners to that local emergency operations center. But because we had multiple jurisdictions involved, it was important that we maintain our place of operation out of our emergency command center. Often we'll ask the district coordinator from the state to join us in our emergency command center, but in this event, he was at the St. Clair County, but we had direct communication with the state in an event that we need to work directly with our federal partners at FEMA in the event that the emergency went to that level. But we maintain our operation at the Lake Huron water treatment facility, which gave us direct communication with all four emergency managers and emergency command staff that was involved. One of the things we asked immediately was that the emergency operations centers that were stood up operate as if this was a face-to-face emergency event, even though we're working virtual. We asked that because we on a normal basis, you would invite your local officials to that emergency operations center, and we'll work directly with the emergency manager and those local officials in that emergency operations center. In this event, because we were operating virtually, we asked those who needed to be involved or who would be at your emergency operations center to just be on our virtual calls when we had those. So I think it was around 8:30, 9 o'clock, I reached out to Brandon Lewis and the other emergency managers, and we stood up a had a virtual emergency command center, and then started an operational briefing period at that time, which would allow us to now have real-time communication from the incident commander and everyone who was invited on that particular call. And we operated from that particular posture until, I think, last week. We began to now ramp down the operational briefing periods. But those took place daily. And in addition to, we stood up a unified incident command brief, as well as a water distribution briefing for additional water that was managed by the state. So at 7:30 in the morning daily, we met with the state and the county levels to make sure we had drinking water for the affected communities. In addition to that, we maintained a water supply in the event that we have any hiccups while we're trying to repair the system. That worked out pretty good. We had our last touch-based meeting last Friday to make sure that we had additional water in case we had any hiccups. Macomb County is pretty much the seat of most of the, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the water distribution if we have to ramp that back up. Hopefully we don't need to use that, and we can use that for other purposes. So I'm open to any questions. Kind of went through that pretty fast, but.
All right, we do have a few here. Commissioner Hall?
Thank you, Chair. The process, to me, of notifying the emergency command centers at the, let's say, county level seems to be pretty well defined and reacted very quickly.
Yes, sir.
Part of my concern is what happens then? How does it get to the residents that there's a boil command in effect once you have notified the centers, and how do the residents get to know immediately to go to boiled water? That's question one.
Yeah, so I'll take that because I think it's an excellent question, right? So this is.
Well, I wanted to welcome you back, Susan. When Brian said you hit the ground running, that was quite, he wasn't kidding.
Yeah, so emergency management is part of what we do. We wish it wasn't, but it is. And so we want to make sure that we're serving the public well. We're public servants. It's important, and we know and understand. To your point, well, thank you for the welcome, but this idea that how do the residents get told, right? And this is a conversation that we had in the EOC because it's really important. So GLWA doesn't have touch points with every one of your residents. What we do is we, as a wholesaler, say communities. We're going to provide information to you, and it's very clear. We will issue press releases. One of the things that Walt talked about in a unified command system, when we all come together as a public information officer, and the intent there is that there's one source of information that comes out of that meeting so that we don't have everybody having different communications that can confuse the public. We've seen that happen. That is not ideal in an emergency. You want to have really good communication. So every day when we have those emergency operations center meetings, we talk about what kind of communications are going to be put out there. And then we talk about the fact that they need to fan those out. Right? We had that conversation just this morning, frankly. It was, when will we have another operational briefing? We'll have another operational briefing on Monday. We're not likely to issue any kind of public statement until then. We will let everyone know in that morning meeting this is what's going to be communicated, and we will make sure that our writing gets out to all of the people in that group so that they can then fan that out. One of the things that I did, so I did at least 24 interviews on this because we wanted to take advantage of every opportunity to get people to know what was going on. So the formal answer to your question is it's a fan out. The informal, let's do everything we can to get the information out to the people, we still do that. Right? So we use the media and leaned on our media relations to get that information out. And that was one of the reasons why we named the initial large group of 23 communities to the Boil Water Advisory, because people aren't listening to the news every minute of every day. They're not on their computers every minute of every day, and the situation was rapidly evolving. Fortunately, we were able to identify it and to isolate it and to move water around quickly, so all those communities weren't terribly impacted. There were a number that were, and a number in Macomb County specifically, but some of the others weren't. But we wanted to make sure in the event it went a different direction, they got that communication right away. So we lean on that media relations, and we, every chance that we can to get in front of people to tell them what's going on, we're doing that just like we are here. So that's how this happened, and that would be our typical way to communicate. Some communities actually have really good communication where they fan out things like texts to their residents. So we saw that happen right away as well in many of the communities.
So
Thank
that's
you.
up
Actually, if we can bring Brandon up to finish, is that okay? Since it was handed off to the county level.
Yeah, so obviously GLE was approached to getting information out is fairly robust through their systems, through the media and so on. But it's our responsibility at the county level to take that over and make sure that that message gets down as far as possible to our local communities and then out as widely as possible amongst our local communities. So like Mr. Davis said, we were first in contact about 8:30 that Saturday morning. I sat in on the first operational briefing with the GLE EOC about 9 o'clock. And then we were off and running, working our local contacts here within the county. My office has a robust network of contacts with all 27 of our communities. We worked through those contacts, sending out multiple email updates throughout the day, having face-to-face meetings with those contacts, working with them to get the information out through their various messaging systems that they have in their community. As you can imagine, Macomb County is very diverse from south to north, from east to west. Each community has a slightly different messaging strategy that works best for them and reaches their residents in the best way possible. Some have text message based notification systems. Some use social media predominantly. Some get through the traditional media, and some honestly are still small enough that they go door to door and have that personal connection. So in emergency management, we work very hard to make sure that all of our community leaders and all of our community officials have the information that they need to share with their local residents in addition to putting that out through all of the media channels that we have available to us at the county level, which we were doing immediately, and amplifying GLEWA's messages as soon as they came out from them.
Well, I know in Roseville we have the emergency broadcast system that
Yes.
comes over interrupts the local television and comes over our local cable network.
Yes.
But I wasn't aware if all the communities have that. When you say fan out, that's pretty ambiguous to me about how does it get down to the lowest common denominator, which is the residents using the water.
Sure. So I will tell you the emergency alert system was not activated in this instance. And as I said, each community does it a little bit differently as far as getting the message out to their constituents because they know them the best. Some have those text messaging notification systems, and then some rely on social media, traditional media, and so on. It's not uniform amongst our communities, but can I use this as an opportunity for a shameless plug for something my department's about to do?
Sure. Ask Jeff.
Okay. So we are in the process now with FEMA. You mentioned, Commissioner Haw, the emergency alert system. IPAWS, the integrated public warning and alert system, is the 21st century version of EAS. And it not only goes out over the television and sends out the television alerts that you're all familiar with, but it also allows, are you all familiar with the messages that you can get over your cell phones, like the presidential alerts that pop in? That would allow us as Macomb County in a certain type of emergency to countywide issue those types of messages across resident cell phones who don't opt out of that messaging. And it would also allow us to send uniform messages out through National Weather Service weather radio. So where in the past the strategy may have been, each local community, emergency management is done from the ground up, from the lowest level to the highest level. So while the strategy has been in the past to allow some of these local communities to pursue the messaging strategy that they feel is best to get the information in their residents' hands as quickly as possible, we are now taking steps, and this process began well before this water emergency, but we are now in the process of working with FEMA to get permissions to be able to send those types of messages from the county level, countywide, giving our residents notifications for significant types of events. So it's an evolving process. This really only came to fruition in Michigan 2 or 3 years ago. I was actually on the work group at the state level who determined all the policies, procedures, and so forth that the various counties will be using, and the technological solution that we'll be using to push these messages out, which the state is providing to us at no cost to the county. So I will actually be coming back to you in the next month or two with the memorandum of understanding from FEMA so that we can enter into that and move forward with that messaging strategy from the county level. But it is something that we've recognized the county, while the locals always need to take the lead in knowing their communities and delivering the messages to them in the best way possible, it's something that we very much recognize as a county that we need to be behind them and amplifying that message and using every resource at our disposal to get that information out as quickly as possible.
I just wanted to say to the fellow commissioners, when we almost had that tornado a couple weeks ago, I was on the golf course in the golf cart with this guy. You really don't want to be around him in an emergency because he's cool, calm, and collected, but everything was as fast as a bullet driving across that course to get out of that almost tornado. If I can have your indulgence, Chairman, and go off topic, we had these two individuals here from Harrison Township talking about their area. You've got the director of GLWA sitting there, and the assistant director of our Public Works Department sitting there. It sounded to me like you're getting the runaround from everybody. I can guarantee you the guy in the blue coat right there handles things proficiently as anybody I've ever seen, so you may want to grab him before he gets out. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner, wait to be put on the spot. Commissioner Matusek.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was the one that brought this issue up, and I love the idea of a more uniform alert system. I mean, the experience I had that morning was I was at the Quinn Road reunion at a park. First indication any of us had that anything was wrong was when the maintenance guy from the park was running to the bathrooms with garbage cans to close off the bathrooms and the sinks and the drinking fountain. And we're like, what's going on? I met the next week with a group of, I will never forget this because I was quite shaken by it, 15 senior citizens. And I asked, when did you learn about this? 3 people in the group learned about it in the morning because their kids called them. The rest of them didn't have, the thing most of us are connected to. It wasn't running on the TV screen, and they didn't know. They're not connected. And so I'm really concerned that when we think about how we notify the residents, that we do all the things. I get that it's way more easier to send a text. And those of us that get text, I love that. For me, that's perfect. I don't even mind when the phone, makes that terrible noise to alert me to something. But I encounter lots and lots of folks who aren't going to get that. They're just not. They may see it on their TV channel if there's a running thing. They may get a phone system. I mean, I know in the county that after the pandemic, we set up the friendly caller program, and we have the names for all the people who collect Meals on Wheels. We have lots of particularly access to information about folks who are pretty isolated, and it would be great if the county could figure out how we can activate those networks. I mean, if everyone who got a Meals on Wheels got a call, that would cover a lot of ground of some really vulnerable people. The congregate living sites, we know where they all are. We service them through the health department. We should be able to call them. We should be able to notify the manager at each of these congregate living sites as there's a problem. So that's my concern. I'm not critical of anything in particular that happened, but there is room for vast improvement. That's what I think. And again, when you read all of the information about vulnerable systems, it's the power grid and the water infrastructure. If someone wanted to attack us, that's where you go. So I don't envy your job, sir. It's a big responsibility, but I think we can do better. And so I'm glad to hear we've gotten this far, but I really want to push us to go a little further. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Actually, concur with that. I was out of town. I found out because I happened to be reading Detroit News minutes after it hit the Detroit News. Called my one sister in Shelby Township and one in Serena Heights, and they had no idea that was going on. So, I mean, it wasn't being fanned out very well. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mrs. Coffey, for coming out. We really appreciate seeing you. You play an important role to all of our community, and we're glad to start this relationship with you. I hope this is the first of many conversations we'll have and working on common problems. You have to forgive my voice. I've got an issue with my throat, but I can't do anything about that. But one of the issues, the whole question of emergency management and major crisis, your group did a great job restoring it, considering the challenges you had to deal with. We had a similar issue occur in New Baltimore not too long ago, where there was a potential risk to the water supply. GWA has water intakes all up and down our Great Lakes area here. Is the emergency management system with the Canadian government been tested? There's a chemical valley up there in Port Huron. There's a major chemical spill. It gets in the intakes, and we got issues. We have some drinking water monitoring system, a shell of what it once was, but they're still there. Is that still operational, and has it been tested? So we don't have a problem and say, guess what, we should have tested it. Maybe you don't even know about it.
So I don't, and it looks like Mr. Davis knows more about that. I will say one thing. One of the things that we have done recently is we installed buoys. These are real-time sampling buoys upstream of where we have our intakes in order to do real-time water quality sampling. That doesn't answer your question, I understand that, but I wanted just you to know too that our research and innovation group, we have a research and innovation group, is looking all the time for better ways to make sure that we're doing what we can to protect our source water. But I will turn it over to Mr. Davis to answer your question.
We get notification through our peace hotline, and I think the information the incident you're speaking of on the St. Clair, we did get notification of it, as well as our water quality staff get notification of incidents that happen in any of the waterways. But there's a notification through the peace hotline. There's additional notification through our Coast Guard and our My Honda Michigan Health Alert notification comes through text and email to myself and other members of our Great Lakes Water Authority.
I understand there's communication. The timeliness is the key. When I was working, the two of us, Commissioner Kraft and I, working in Congressman Miller's office, were very involved in establishing a drinking water monitoring network and system along the Doug March was there, part of the Water Quality Board. The quickest way we got information was from the Indians on Walpole Island. There were problems on the Canadian side. So timeliness is key. So I'd suggest or feel comfortable if maybe you did an exercise to test how long it takes you to get notification. Because if there's an issue with our water system, we need mass notifications instantly. And the problems that Commissioner Matuzik and other commissioners have raised, will be a real serious issue if we can't get notification around. So prevention prevents a pound of cure, right? That's what they say. And
yeah, so I think that's great. That's a great idea. I appreciate you giving us that piece of information for us to follow up on. One of the things that we do routinely, and we will do with this, is have a hot wash process where we go back and we'll take down this information that you have given to us, and we'll make sure we'll sit with the communities who are involved and we'll say, okay, what went well? What could be done better? What do we need to do to improve? And we will work through that process. We'll take that comment that you just made and the one you made as well, because we're here in Macomb County, and I think it's great, and it sounds like you're on the ball and you've got a way to go forward. The other counties maybe would benefit from hearing some of that as well, so we'll make sure that we share that information across that customer group.
Thank you.
Yep.
And I would, is that the wireless emergency alert? Yes. Okay. In addition to Macomb County, Brandon getting on the wireless emergency alert system, the city of Detroit is already on that system, as well as Wayne County. I know Wayne County's been on it for a couple of years, as well as the city of Detroit. So I believe after Macomb County, after you're on that system, most of the counties in this particular region will be on the system. And just a quick example, I first learned about it, I was in Virginia Beach, and I got a notification on my telephone that there was a tornado take cover. And everyone was taking cover, but I was wondering how in the heck did they do this? Because we need to have this here in Michigan, and sure enough, we several emergency operations centers like yours adopted that philosophy, and through FEMA was allowed to use that particular system. It's the same one you would get your Amber Alerts. And so you get an Amber Alert notification immediately. It's the exact same system that you'll be allowed to use.
my old boss said, improvement's the biggest room in the house. Yeah. And we always got room to improve. Mm-hmm. We got a great team in place, and I'm sure we'll get there. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Matuzak was referencing those that don't have smartphones. I'm guessing Commissioner Farrington's sister may have a smartphone, most likely does have a smartphone. So what occurred to me was there was a lot of discussion about meetings and then down to the local level and then fanning out. And I have always been a big advocate of local control, but it strikes me in this situation, small communities don't have entire emergency departments. A lot of them just have some individual that has an entirely different job that is designated as their emergency contact with the county. They don't have a department, they don't have an organization. And quite frankly, they don't have the money to create that kind of department. So in a wide-scale emergency, it would seem to me that the meetings and then meeting down and then fanning out would not be the most opportune way to do this. So my question about the text messages, at what point in this process that you guys are talking about do these things occur? Because Julie seemed to think that text messages went out. I don't know. I don't live in one of those communities, so I don't know if text messages ever did go out. And if they didn't, it seems, I'm wondering, at the point that you meet, and then you meet with the emergency, and you're calling these different communities, and then they're calling the other communities, let's just assume it was something that was going to go out in an emergency alert. At what point in that process does that take place? Is it after all of those communications have taken place? And that, I don't know if that's for...
Well, I want to make sure I understand your question right, so I'm going to try to repeat what you're asking. When we initially, if you're speaking of a boil water advisory, have that communication and pass that communication on to your county, and in this case, you have also Clinton Township has an emergency manager, and that information is passed to those jurisdictions that are part of our Emergency Operations Center. From that point, the deliverance of those messages go at the speed of the county level, as Brandon mentioned.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking this isn't, you're the ones that have been brought in front of us, but I'm not necessarily sure the question at issue is your job in any way,
Correct.
shape, or form. So just out of curiosity, so this is a, so you said the emergency system was not used in this situation, and I'm not qualified to know if it should be or if it shouldn't have been. But let's assume that there may be a situation that it does. I mean, I get Amber Alerts at 3 o'clock in the morning that cause me to fall out of my bed. They're so loud. And you can localize those. And even if we didn't have it in place, we know that that system's in place. In an emergency, it seems to me there would be folks we could tap into to do that. At what point during that chain of meetings would that take place?
So, okay, I'm going to kind of back up because I think we've got like 3 issues that I kind of want to unpack in the answer to that question. So I think the first thing I want to say is one of the things that we realized, and I think Walt would probably agree with me, is emergency management has evolved a lot in the last 10 to 15 years. And I think one of the things that we're learning is, we're evolving away from some of the 20th century communication structures that we typically worked with in the past, and we're trying to evolve more to 21st century communications. I actually teach emergency communications at a local university, and one of the things that we talk about is a technology divide. There are definitely the people that you can reach with a smartphone. There are definitely people that door-to-door is going to be the best way to reach them, and it tends to be age, but it's not universally age. So one of the things that we've been working on in emergency management over the last few years is how do we reach all of those diverse stakeholders with different types of messaging that say the same thing. So it is an evolving process, and I can't stand here right now and say I have a prepackaged answer that I can give you that solves the problem immediately. It is something that we are working on. Going back to the when does that message typically go out? Typically, you want to put the message out as soon as possible once the information that you're putting out is verified to be accurate. So there always needs to be a little bit of a lag there, because the last thing you want to do is put out a piece of information and then turn around and have to retract it because it's not correct, or it's giving bad instruction, or it's just generally not helping the situation a little bit. I will tell you that it seems like as the information went down that chain that you were talking about, every community has a little bit different way of looking at what's the urgency in that and how are we putting it out. And those did go out at different speeds, and I will say that yes, that absolutely happened up to and including in some communities probably not going out at all. So which is why we're looking to modernize some of those systems and have that umbrella backstop over top of it, so that in an emergency that is very large and requires, broad reach for getting messages out, the county can step in and assist those locals in expanding that reach.
Right, because it occurred to me standardization is an issue. Also, and I asked this because of the smaller water main breaks, I have to tell you, I turn on my water and it's brown and I don't get any text messages. And wouldn't it be nice if we had a system, and we can't expect every community to purchase individual systems, but wouldn't it be nice if we had a system at the county level where a city could call and say, we've got a precinct here where, or we've got 3 streets where all the water's brown. Can you send out a text message? See, I'm not talking about Julie's thing about the door. I'm talking about the ones that do have smartphones, because that is a very significant amount of the population that we could address like right out of the gate if we looked at that type of situation. And I don't know what you deem as an emergency, but it got the attention because of how many communities were involved, but that happens to me on a regular basis. You guys know it. You flush the toilet and all of a sudden the water in it's brown and nobody has said anything to you. At least it happens in East Point.
That might be
all
another
the
issue
time.
altogether.
So it would be nice if communities like that may not necessarily have something.
And if I can go ahead and add to my discussion about iPause just a little bit, because one of the things that I've discussed with Angela Elsey, our dispatch director, is there are a lot of capabilities of these systems that they have now and a lot of different directions that you can go with them. The state's giving us a system called Code Red that's going to allow us to implement iPause, which were the things that I talked about earlier, the WIA alerts on the cell phones, the National Weather Service radio messages, and the EAS. Those are what we refer to as opt-out systems, meaning that you're in unless you physically take yourself out. We're also we try to be very careful about how we use those, because we don't want to overuse those and make residents tune them out. So those are not necessarily the best venue for sending out messages like, the water in East Point is brown, but it's safe to drink if you boil it or whatever. What that's talking about is a second type of system called an opt-in system, where residents actually register to receive the alerts from those types of systems, and you can give them information with a little bit more frequency and in a little bit more detail, because they've opted to get that information and they're not going to tune it out. So it's something that Angela Elsey and I have discussed as something that we absolutely need to take a look at once iPause is up and running. I don't want to stand here and talk about what protocols we'd use, but it is something that's on our radar.
And just so you know, when I'm speaking about like a boil water, I'm not in my mind thinking about an Amber Alert that jolts you. I'm just simply thinking about a text message to somebody who lives in a particular area, just let you know that your particular home is under a boil water alert for the time being.
Those are the two big differences between those two types of systems. The iPause systems that I talked about, those are the jolt you out of your sleep kind of alerts. Your phone's going to go off for that, just like it would an Amber Alert. The TV, you're going to get an EAS on TV. Your National Weather Service radio, if you have one, is going to go off. It's going to be very disruptive and very startling, and it's meant to catch your attention. So we obviously limit what we use those for. The text messaging type system is a potential add-on to something like that, and something that we are going to significantly explore, perhaps doing from the county level as we go forward and moving into these systems, as opposed to solely delegating that responsibility to our local communities, as was, kind of that older 20th century system that we operated. We're not going to take that control away from the locals. Like I know in Clinton Township, you have a pretty robust NIXL system. I use that as an example because you have your own emergency manager, and several of your communities have systems like that as well. We wouldn't necessarily be looking to replace that, but we'd be looking to bring in a system that could serve as a backstop to either amplify those messages or to step in when the local community loses the ability to send a message or simply doesn't have the resources to have a system in order to do that. Because you're absolutely right. Some communities are very small and do not have the resources. These systems are very expensive.
And I don't have any more questions, just to recognize, I do recognize some water main breaks are going to resolve in an hour and others are going to be hours, and there's a distinction between the two. And you don't have to respond because there are several other speakers. I'm just saying this. I do recognize that they may not all be the type of thing that you would do that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Van Sickle.
Thank you, Chair. I don't know exactly who to address this to. I was sort of curious about these texting systems. Do they text to all the people, all the cell phones registered in an area, or do they text to all the cell phones that happen to be attached to certain cell towers?
So I'll go ahead and take that one. And it's two different things for two different systems. The iPause system, the big disruptive one that I talked about, that's cell tower based. So what happens is, say, I'll have a computer terminal in the emergency management office. I'll direct a staff member, put together a wireless emergency alert message about X and send it out. We're limited to 360 characters. That then hits every cell phone tower in Macomb County and broadcasts that message from that cell phone tower for 30 minutes. So any device that comes within range of that cell phone tower within 30 minutes will get that message during the alerting period. The downside to that is it bleeds. So people in St. Clair County will get it, people in Oakland County will get it, people in Lapeer County will get it, depending on where they are. The text messaging based systems, those you opt your number into. You generally have to go to a website, give your phone number, and give permission to contact, and then you're put in a database, and then you can geographically select certain areas, and the numbers are organized based on geography or entire county or quadrants or anything like that, and they go out.
Well, yeah, I understand the opt-in feature. I was more concerned with the one where you're just sending it out, because we do have a lot of hotels, a lot of travelers in Macomb County, and they're people who we don't even know who or what they are.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So I was just curious whether they were going to be hit.
Yes.
Because their cell phones are registering against a cell tower.
On a wireless emergency alert, yes,
Yeah.
they will.
Okay.
Any cellular device that has that capability enabled will receive that message if it comes within range of a cell tower within a half an hour.
Okay, well, that's good to know. The other question I have is, and again, this may be off topic and maybe you want to take this back. Quite frankly, I'd like to put all the emergency managers out of business by not having emergencies. No offense. And to that end, I know in Macomb County, our Public Works Commissioner is doing a lot of inspection on the underground infrastructure for sewers. I would be interested in finding out what kind of inspections you're doing on this. Is it 28 miles, 35 miles of 10-foot pipe that's running from Port Huron over to Imlay City? And if those are inspections that are going on, what kind of incident did this fall into that we actually had this break and the inspections didn't do it, or are we not doing inspections? And if you want to go away and come back with other information, that's okay too, because I know this is off topic.
No, I can answer it. So in the regional system, we have a program we're working through inspections on water mains. One of the things about this particular water main, it's about a 50-year-old water main, should really last about 100 years. So we're trying to figure out why it is that it failed prematurely, should not have been in that situation. Water mains, when they were designed and installed, were really not designed and installed with the idea that you would inspect them. So very different from a sewer main. So I think, so for GLWA on our sewer mains, we've been through all of them. We go through them on a 3-year cycle. We're going through them again. They're open, right? There's just water flowing in a pipe, and you can get in there. You can put a remote operated vehicle in there. You can put cameras in there. You can fairly easily inspect the sewers. The water system's not so much, right? They're intentionally closed for public safety, and they were not designed to have inspections. And it's also challenging because they're live, and they need to be live, right? So we can't necessarily just take them down and walk through them. It would be nice if we could do that because we would feel a lot more comfortable. But what has happened in the last, it's much like emergency management. What's happened in the information age in the last 10 years or so is developing and evolving technology to allow us to do it. This big water main is on an inspection cycle for us to do a non-manned inspection where we create access points and we run technology equipment through the pipe, and it can do that kind of work. In this particular case, with this type of pipe, there are kind of three methods. There's what they call a smart ball, this little ball that you can put in there, and we can track it with GPS, and it can listen for leaks. And we disinfect it, we put it in, nobody has to go in it, nobody has to be out of water. So you run that thing through. And that's the first, to see if there's any leaks, right? Because leaks you can hear. Smaller diameter mains, people will sound them, right? Little water mains in the community, sometimes they'll do some sounding devices to see if they can hear a leak. This type of pipe it's called pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe. It's got multiple layers, and one of the layers that keeps it together for high pressure is a wire winding. The wire winding has a magnetic signature that you can run another piece of equipment through that water, and it's called a pipe diver. It's like this 10 or 15-foot arrow-looking thing, and it can give us readings on the magnetic integrity of that wire. Because that wire is what keeps it in tension. It's pre-tensioned. And if the wires begin to break after a certain point in time, that pipe becomes compromised. So that's that next technology. So first find the leaks. The idea here is you can't take and just replace 2% of your water system every year. It'd be crazy expensive, right? It's challenging for us already with affordability and water charges, right? People are already concerned about that, and you don't want to do that. So you run this equipment down this pipe, and you can surgically say, this pipe needs to be replaced, that one's in danger. So one of the things that we have slated for this pipe, and we had slated for this pipe but hadn't executed yet, was these two types of inspection methods. The other thing you can do is once you run that pipe diver down, you can put an acoustic fiber optic cable in the pipe, and you can listen for wire breaks. You can connect that to technology, and 24 hours a day you can listen to see if that pipe, and this is for a particular type of pipe now, if that type of pipe can get compromised. So we have a program we call our Linear System Integrity Program. On the sewer side, like I said, we do linear system is just all the pipes because we've got lots of pumps and treatment works and these types of things too. But in that program, then we go through and we say, okay, which pipes are we going to prioritize? Which ones are we going to get through? We have that program funded in our capital program because time and time again, we want to get in and then we will replace something. So this pipe itself now, we will accelerate that inspection of it, but hadn't been through that process yet and was, not something we expected to break because of age. We are very interested to see what those engineers are going to come back with and tell us why it happened.
So you don't know yet what caused this break?
We don't. I think people have speculations that it's always dangerous, right?
You
We're
don't
going to
need
wait for those engineers. When they went in, they're experts in this type of pipe, this PCCP pipe, pre-stressed concrete cylinder pipe, and they not only identified that which needed to be replaced, that was job one, right? How much pipe do we need to be replaced, get it ordered, get it in the ground, get people's water service back to normal. But what they also did is they did forensic analysis at that point. They actually took samples. They took samples of the metal. They took lots and lots of forensic information, and they're back going through that. They sent those samples out to the lab. The lab's going to come back and tell us, what was the condition of that wire? What does that concrete look like? These types of things. So we'll get a report on that. I would expect it's 30 to 45 days out. And then at that point in time, we'll be able to say, okay, this is the mode of failure or modes of failure that they think were likely. Do we have other pipe that potentially could be like that? And if so, let's get out to it right away.
So the fix actually involved taking a section of the pipe out and replacing with the ordered part from Texas or whatever that you put in. Okay.
Yep, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
Yep, you're welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a couple comments. Chair Brown mentioned the real-time water monitoring system, and I mean, I've been banging that drum since I got here. I talked to Doug when I first got here about that project, and I was working with a former commissioner as well. I mean, we did research. We went to treatment facilities, and we saw how it could work. And for the folks in Harrison Township with the muck, I've been down there. I've seen it. I've stepped in it. I've lost a shoe in it. those sorts of monitoring systems could give us all the information we need as to what sort of chemicals are in the water, if there's organic substances in the water that are causing that. I mean, that whole system is something that I think could be extremely helpful for us in our area, for Southeast Michigan as a whole, and because we are right next door to Canada, and what happens over there, or could potentially happen over there, to help keep us all safe and our water system safe. And part two, I guess I need to commend my local township. I live in Chesterfield Township. I opted into the alerts. I received 3-4 emails and a couple text messages, and that was fantastic. And I guess I kind of took that for granted and thought it was standard across the board and across the county, but apparently not. But our system seemed to work really well. I commend our folks there in the township. But again, I opted in. Not everybody has obviously opted in. And even around the county, if you have these systems, you still have to take that step. So whatever we can do to broader reach our folks. Brandon, I know you're the guy to work on it, and I appreciate that. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. Deviating just a little bit from all the highly important things that have been said, for any kind of emergency situation, especially with elderly or people who need help, with families or your neighbor, people should always be sure that someone who can't get it, or to be prepared, have extra water in the house, have extra food products that that at least for every 6 months or a year, check the dates when they get it, or I'm sure families do this for their parents, so that even if it's a bad couple days, you're planning on they're planning on getting groceries, or you're going to bring them groceries and you can't get there. It could be a road situation, but either way, so that people have things in the house to last them at least a couple days, if not longer. It's just in situations that can make a difference. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Sabatini.
Thank you, Chair. I found out about the break actually through the news. My wife had found out that way. But I think like most of us, when we hear there's a water main break, we kind of, push it to the side. We hear that communication a lot because things break down. I mean, it's just normal. But I think this one, being that was, 1 million users were affected by this break specifically, my question to the GLWA, and first of all, thank you everyone for being here. I think this is great, collectively getting the information and talking through it, and then, bringing it back and always trying to get better at what we do. But being such that we had 1 million users in this situation, first question is this the first time that we've had this many users affected with a break to this size as an emergency? Or has there been one in the past that has been similar in size?
So this is the biggest one for Great Lakes Water Authority. We stood up, not that long ago. I understand because the common question, have we had any issues with this pipe in the past? Apparently in the 80s there was a break on this pipe. I would expect that there wouldn't have been nearly as many people impacted at that time, right? A whole different era and lots less population, but this is our biggest. Okay. It's our biggest.
So being that it was the largest, what did you learn from this, and based on the information that you have now, obviously you haven't got the engineering results back and what happened, why it failed, but right now, what have you learned, and what changes are you gonna make going forward if this happens again?
So we're still learning, but I would tell you where we are today, right? So one of the best things that I think happened is what you see right here, Walt and Brendan talking, right? The emergency communication work that we have been doing, because we do tabletop exercises, someone mentioned that, right? Those are working. We need to make sure we're engaging all the communities in that, right? Every county, every community has a different group of people who participate. So when we do that hot wash, we're going to talk to them about, we need to make sure that we know all your emergency operations center people. Just let's make sure we have it. We did a good job, but there were a couple times people were saying, hey, I didn't get the meeting invitation or this, that. That's one thing we'll do right away. But I would tell you, I think that's a good piece of things that went well. because Walter, Mr. Davis, and Brendan could cover the emergency pieces. What you didn't hear us say is Cheryl Porter, our Chief Operating Officer for Water, is the incident commander. So Cheryl's working hard on all things, very, very focused on getting water back to people, right? So being able to hand off the emergency communication to others, very important, and that's obviously a critical piece. The same thing with the information pieces. So we have been doing emergency planning. More emergency scenario planning is good. We had emergency planning. We knew our operators knew what to do. One of the things that I give our operators a lot of credit for is in the moment when they instituted their emergency operations procedures, which they do and they know how to do, they began to think, okay, community A is still having trouble. What can we do? Oh, let's boost pressure over there. Let's turn that valve over there. Let's move these pumps around. Let's do this. So those types of things and making sure we're fostering an environment where people bring those types of things up is important, because in that moment, somebody mentioned how fast, you mentioned the fast golf cart, right? Things happen very quickly in emergencies. So that drilling, tabletop exercises, encouraging and fostering that free thinking, so that because it was many of our operators, boots on the ground saying, hey, what if we did this? What if we did that? So I think that's another good thing. In terms of how it is that we are approaching our inspection, we're certainly going to go back and take a look once we get that information back from the engineers about, we might then have a change to our linear system integrity program in terms of what we're looking at. We don't yet have that information, so we'll work through that. I think overall, the biggest lesson learned is we are emergency responders, and we have to be, the public expects us to be, and we have to be out there communicating. That's another thing we did, and I think we could continue to make sure that we do, is daily communications. I called Chesterfield Township. Somebody mentioned Chesterfield Township. So I called Chesterfield Township. I called Macomb Township. I said, hey, how's this working for you? Right? We want to make sure that those people are in the know and give us that feedback on what's going on. So one of the comments, it was Macomb Township, I think, had said, your written communications every single day, because we did that for a while, very helpful, because they never knew when they were going to have to brief someone else. And they had that most current information in front of them. So all those things, I think, work very, very well. The making sure that we have clear communication about how to get drinking water. The state was excellent in coming to the table. The governor declared state of emergency for this. We got those resources, but making sure we have those communications grooved and enact that very quickly. I think some of the counties had to stand up a process for distribution, right? Making sure that those processes have already been thought through. So this is part of that. What do we do after the fact to make sure that when something happens again, the processes are already in place, and then kind of drilling on that. Just doing those drills. So I would say right now.
I was pleased. I represent 90% of Macomb Township. So obviously we did get the communication. I mean, our township has put signs all over the place, don't water your lawns. We're under, a no water mandate, to try and help others so that we're not, maximizing the system. We can save that water so others can use it. I thought Commissioner Brown's comment earlier was a great one as far as testing the system. A break like this doesn't happen every day, but when it does happen, we want to make everyone aware. Like you said, the communication, everyone's stepping in. So I think, we talked about the Amber Alerts and all the communications that could happen, even billboards. I mean, everything's digital today. And obviously everyone doesn't get their information the same way, whether it's a phone, whether it's a text, whether it's on the news. It's all different. So those are all challenges, I think, that everyone has to work collectively to figure out. But in regards to the line specifically, you said it's a 50-year line. The pipe itself is a concrete pipe. It's engineered to last 100 years, or it's engineered to last 50 years?
100. It should have a 100-year useful life.
And then the useful life on this one that it broke obviously was less than that. What's the going forward thought as far as, obviously, when you get closer to that 100-year mark, right? These pipes they can't last forever. So what's the plan with the authority as replacing those pipes in the future? Is there funds being set aside that eventually these segments have to be replaced, and how is that going to happen in the future?
So this is that challenge, the affordability challenge, right? Which is why that technology is so good, right? There are pipes that will last more than 100 years. There are pipes that will last less than 100 years. We all know this happens every day in the assets that we have to manage, even in our homes, right? We expect. So for us, it is that diagnostic tool. If it's a critical pipe, good chance we're going to throw that acoustic fiber optic cable in it so that we can listen and make sure that we're monitoring the health of that kind of pipe. Again, that's a specific type of pipe. We have a lot of that pipe, though. So for us, I think that's the question. Your question about, or the approach, your question about is there money being put aside for it? We do have money in our capital improvement program to do work because we do have emergencies. So we have not only money set aside for emergencies, unforeseen things, we also have money for programmatically. Now, it would take decades for us to get through our whole system. You know, we have hundreds and hundreds of miles of this pipe, and it wasn't built, designed, and, you know, I'm an engineer, so I can say this. The engineers didn't design it back then with inspection in mind. So when we go out to those pipes and we have to get them ready, we have to go build access ways to put equipment in because nobody thought of that when that was put in 50 years ago, right? Good engineers, great engineers, brilliant people, but they just didn't think it through. So it's not something we can just go do all at once. It will take us decades to get through the system. The key is to prioritize the pipes, understanding how many people are impacted, the nature of the ability to serve people through the network with resiliency. One of the things that we've also done to gird this up is look for areas that we need to build legs of the system that loop. So if you've got a break here and that area can be served by kind of two different areas instead of like a single feed with nothing on the end, we have two large looping projects that we're doing right now for the biggest areas in the system that were what we would call like a single feed or single ended. So if there is a break, isolate it with valves and feed, you know, from both directions. You're still going to have people out of water, but not as many people out of water.
Right.
So
More
those are the two
redundancies.
approaches.
Redundancies.
Yep, exactly.
Great. All right, thank you so much. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. On the second round, Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. Many people were obviously very badly impacted by not having water. Everyone understood you had a big pipe, it had to be repaired, took some time to do it. But what happened when you ordered the pipe and it was the wrong pipe, caused another delay? Who's accountable? Who's responsible for that? How did that happen?
So I think it's a good question. I don't think it really delayed us horribly, but let me explain what did happen.
It caused a delay
So we
sometime.
ordered the pipe. We ordered the pipe. The manufacturer manufactured the pipe. They sent the pipe to us, and the manufacturer called and said, hey, we just realized the pipe wasn't the specification that it needed to be. So they identified it. They called us. They told us they would immediately make this right. I think we probably had 2 or 3 days delay in that because we were waiting for additional pipe segments anyway. When we did that second that order for that second part of the pipe, we ordered more than we needed because as they cut that pipe apart, they had to support the pipe that's there, cut the pipe apart, and put the pipe back together. Our field engineer said, listen, we need to make sure we've got more than what we need. We've got different types of pieces. We need to have, you know, we really only needed another 16 feet. I think he ordered 42 feet of different segments to make sure that when they put this thing back together, that the people who are constructing it had what they needed. So I believe it delayed us 2 or 3 days, which is unfortunate. But the manufacturer did identify it. They did, and they called us and let us know because it was in the internal part of the pipe. It wasn't something that we could have visually noticed. So thankfully, I'm very thankful that they did that because had we put that pipe back in place and we had another failure, it would have impacted all these people again. I'm not thankful that they made the mistake in the first place, right? That's pretty disappointing, but glad that they owned up to it and corrected it right away.
Well, I'm glad they did their job. That's what they're supposed to do. They're
Agreed.
supposed to have integrity and operate with integrity. But that caused economic damage 3 days, I don't know how long it was. How many thousand people were without water because of their mistake? There's economic damages that maybe you ought to explore and hold them accountable for that. Because our friends, people young and old, were very seriously inconvenienced by that. And time matters. Something to consider.
Yeah, understood.
Thank you.
Seeing no other speakers, on behalf of the entire board, thank you very much for you and your team coming out here. It's truly appreciative having this time to speak with you.
Yep, you're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. We do have a motion to receive and file. Please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. Next item is 7A and B. They're correspondence from Macomb County Public Works Office as well as the Department of Roads. If I can have a motion to receive and file 7A and 7B.
So move.
So moved by Hall, support by Wallace. Please, see no speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. Next, we have public participation. Again, this is the opportunity for public participation. It's for those who wish to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any issue. Sir, go ahead.
May I just readdress the board
Yes,
momentarily?
sir, please.
Harold, you asked that, we've been ignored for a long time. We do have some information now. The Army Corps of Engineers is working on the project with us now, Mr. Greg Massoff. He has also got participation from Candace Miller and Jeff. There's a study that will be done in the future. What we're waiting for is ERDOC, a part of Army Corps of Engineers, to write the bill of material of how the study needs to be done and what the cost may be and who's going to help fund it. This has been delayed now for over 6 months because of a party leaving ERDOC, going into another division of the government, and they're trying to get somebody to write this bill of material. But we do have some support from Candace Miller and the Army Corps of Engineers. I just want to clarify that.
Thank you very much, sir. Sir, go ahead. Please come up.
Doug Martz, I live in Harrison Township. I wanted to say a little something about, I live in Florida 6 months of the year. I live in a little town called Mount Dora that's in the middle of the state, in the middle of nowhere. I get notifications of hurricanes, of tornadoes, of water main breaks, of kids being abducted. Either I get an alarm where my phone goes off or my text goes off, and everybody in my community, I can't see where that's so hard to do. I mean, and I live in an older community. I'm 73 years old, and most of the people down there are old, and we all get these information. But anyways, one other thing. We had a monitoring system that cost $3 million to protect drinking water. And I'm not worried about, it sounded like they did a good job with the spills, but I'm talking Sarnia had a spill again a month ago of benzene. The same crap that we hear on the news all the time that they tell the people from that military thing to go sue. We had 1,000 spills on the St. Clair River, and the United States was never notified of one. Until I became friends with a chief, Donna Day from Walpole Island, and she would call me and tell me when there were spills when I was doing this full time. We didn't know there were spills. They never called the DEQ. I would call the DEQ and the governor's office to tell them we had spills. If you think calling the different communities, I mean the DEQ and the EPA, the DEQ has to call Canada. Canada has to call us back. They have to pull samples. By the time we'd find out there's a spill, it's through the whole system. It doesn't work. The monitoring system we put in would go to all the water plant operators, and they would make the decision on closing the water plants because they're responsible for our drinking water. This whole thing is stupid. We had the whole system put in place. We raised $3 million, $1 million through Candace. I would go to the state and get $250,000 grants. It came down to keeping the thing in place, and we're talking 13 water plants all the way from Port Huron to Toledo. The cost per person to keep it going was 25 cents on your water bill a year. And Tony Morocco and John McCullough from Oakland County decided that was too much money for us to spend to protect our drinking water. It's stupid. If you want to know more about it, I worked 10 years to raise the $3 million to do this. There's spills all the time still on the St. Clair River. We don't know about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Is there anyone else for public participation? Seeing no one else, public participation is closed. We'll move on to commissioners' comments. Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. I met Mike at a Harrison Township music event that they had once a month for 3 months in the summertime. And one of the trustees introduced the band, and he said, "Oh, this woman in the red shirt you see back there is your county commissioner. If you want to have any complaints, go see her." Everybody laughed. But Mike came over and talked to me. We went away from the crowd, and he was explaining what you're seeing in these two pictures that are by your desks, on your desks. And he was explaining all this to me. He had gone to the Army Corps. He had people. They were going to be using sonar to see all the water area and all this. They weren't going to be doing that yet, but they did, because he and I have been in conversation. Candace has been there. Mark's been there. The supervisor's been there. A lot of people have been there seeing it. And these pictures look, I want to make sure you understand, this walkout, that's where the boats are supposed to be. And I'm sure you all got that. There's some little water there. It looks like it's weeds or grass. If you weigh 137 pounds or less, you can walk on it. On certain areas, you can walk on it. It looks like it's land. I told Doug Martz, the water czar, who knows everything practically. He knows everything about water here in the country and around the world. And I said, "What is this stuff?" And he said, "Barb, they keep naming these things, different things. Labrith, Lingbaya's this last name or this name." And he said, it's really just sewage. It's sewage that comes down, and wherever there's areas that come out to the water, then any number of things happen. This particular, what they're calling Lingbaya, as I understand, it comes from the lake in. It has a string type thing, and it connects to the bottom of the muck or the land underneath the water, to the base of the water. And that's how it keeps moving, is at the base. It grows that way toward the land. He keeps it cut around the stones around that area. But this is just, when my husband and I went over, we were driving, and I said, I need to take a look at this. And I just couldn't quit saying, oh my gosh. I mean, the pictures look pretty bad, but when you see it and you realize people in the condos, these beautiful condos are right there, there's a whole group of them, and they're looking out at this, the beautiful water out there, but there's nothing right by their place. And they can get a discount on their boat launches here if you apply in a certain amount of time. They didn't know about that, so they're paying their full taxes on this. It's just a shame, but I've been talking to fishermen down in the shores. One guy says, "My 3 fishing spots, there's no fish anymore." Well, I don't know if it's this stuff, but it's something, and it's right along the shore in different areas, and it's just not all right. It's completely wrong. It's affecting people's lives. Everything has changed, and it's not just here. It's along the shore in a number of places. Doug said it's in other areas of the state. So this is nothing brand new. It's just terrible. And I kind of wonder, when he told me about it, I thought, well, if nothing's happened by now, is anything going to happen? You know, it's going to cost a lot of money. They're going to have to dredge that out, make sure they get the roots. It's kind of a cove type thing. And that's the way the water goes in those places. Canals. Doug's got something by his canal, in his canal at different times. And Doug and Candace say the same thing. Oakland County 5-1. It's just, they can keep their stuff somewhere, do whatever they have to do with it. Mr. Gravity brings it down. And there really has to be something to help us. Something, someone, some group has to help us with this.
That's why I went to the Army Corps of Engineers. I was totally frustrated with calling everybody, nobody wanting to help.
Yeah, so I hope that there will be an answer. But I wanted you to have an understanding how really terrible it is. Just picture isn't enough. Thank you very much, Chair. Oh, also, if you haven't gone through 16 Mile, and for any citizens that will be watching, The railroad crossing 16 in Groesbeck will be tied up. Hopefully, they'll be fixing it, and hopefully they won't have a strike this week. Wrong week to have them start, maybe. But anyway, watch that area. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
And we all know that Candace has said that for years. Her big fight is if we clean up our mess, we have a right to ask Oakland County to clean up theirs. But as long as the state says what they're doing is acceptable, then I don't know that we have recourse. But that's not why I asked to speak. Today is my 37th anniversary. Right now, my husband's probably thinking, what was I thinking 37 years ago? I think it's unlikely that I'm going to see him today. If I do see him, I think it'll be around 9 o'clock tonight. But I got very lucky 37 years ago. Just wanted to acknowledge it. Thank you.
Very nice. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. The Commissioner Center's comments. Any work along that lake, unfortunately, has to involve the Army Corps of Engineers and in partnership with the state, with the Army Corps, because that's federal lands. Unfortunately for the poor people who live there, waiting for the Army Corps of Engineers to get a study done, you could probably build a pyramid quicker. I've got a lot of experience in my career waiting for the Army Corps of Engineers to do reports, and they're not quick. It's laboriously long. But unfortunately, they're the ones that got jurisdiction to dredge. You can't do anything with that. You can't dig it out. You can't do anything without their blessing. But we can go to the root cause, and that's up the street across the Quinder, where those nice people in Oakland County dump on us every day and dump billions of gallons of sewage decade after decade. And that's the cause of what you're seeing.
We think it is.
Well, it is. Just trust me. That's the problem. And so we're going to look at people. Obviously, sounds like Candace and the people have been involved anyway. But we're going to find out who's been doing what and to make sure that things are moving forward and you haven't been ignored. Oftentimes, it's just communication. But this board, and I know Commissioner Zinner is real passionate. She's raising hell about it behind the scenes. And you're going to get the answers and more importantly, action. So take care. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. If I may suggest, this might be a good use of our public relations firm to get with these fine folks and others along the water, so the Detroit News and Free Press have the stories to tell about the community and where it's coming from. Seeing no other speakers, we're going to move on to adjournment. Do I have a motion?
Motion to adjourn. Support.
Motion by Romano, support by Zinner. Please vote and have a wonderful day.